Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talking Points with KPI, episode number 44. So today, we have a familiar face. He was on the podcast a while ago, probably in the episode 30s, 20s, I would assume.
Somewhere there, probably.
And so we were just introducing Cameron as a coach, but today we have Cameron Crone, the pitching coordinator here at KPI, and head of the remote program. So we are going to talk a lot about the remote program. And for those of you who don't understand what a remote program is or the basis of one, it is just a program that kids that are not in the same area as us are allowed to get their same training and same systems through Cameron, who is our head remote coach. So right now, I'll just have you go into a little bit of what made you want to start the remote program, and then what it is right now.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. Pleasure to be back on the podcast.
It is good.
Really, there's a couple things that spurred starting the remote program. We started having a small demand for it through different organizations that we're affiliated with, have a good relationship with. We started to get some guys reaching out that were out of a realistic travel time. And then it just made sense for me to kind of lead the charge because I had trained remotely in the past. I trained with a few different organizations remotely through COVID mostly, and really just developed a passion. Like, not everyone's going to have access to a facility like KPI, and just trying to make the most of what you got and trying to develop anywhere just became a passion of mine. Trying to help guys how I needed help and facilitate the best online remote program I could.
Yeah. So building that process out, and then like you talked about, seeing yourself in a remote program already, talk about how, and obviously you went into the structure of the demand and the need for it. Talk about some of the struggles that went into it and what was kind of something you didn't expect from now the coaching side instead of the player side.
So realistically, the whole thing's been kind of a growing experience. We're almost a year in right now, month and a half away. Started with an original group of 5 to 6 guys, and now I'm up to 22. So not big growth when you look at the actual numbers, but along the way we've had a lot of good learning experiences. Anything from dictating how they schedule their meetings to how we check in, starting to rely much more heavily on video, like trying to get as much video as possible on any aspect of training. That's really the only way we get to check in. But from the coaching side, it's just interesting looking in at the different scenarios. Like, I think going in, I thought it was going to be one way, like most kids are going to be in one scenario, whereas like they have an ideal gym setup. They go to 24-hour fitness or something like that, and realistically, like every kid's different, have different relationships with their high school teams. Their high school coaches dictate different things. They have different access to equipment and stuff. So really just the amount of adjustments having to make, like just having some feel,
For sure.
Not really making things up on the fly, but changing things based on what people have access to. Kind of expected, but not to this extent. Definitely was part of the learning curve for sure.
No, exactly.
Was expected.
Yeah, for sure. And you do, and not ever being in a remote program, seeing the lengths that you do go to ensure that these kids are getting the right training seems like a lot, right? You're able to give them a system that they are able to follow with the understanding that if you do have questions at any time, that you contact us and you let us know, and then we will and I may say, like, very responsively and very quick, that you guys get on this and you handle these situations very quickly. Talk about how you've seen not only like the reception, because obviously it's been good, it's been growing, there's a steady progress. That's kind of the outlier in that. But talk about how you've seen the kids kind of go, okay, I can do this in a situation like you talked about, where it's not 24-hour fitness, I can go to a field and then I can do that, how they're able to do that in their own home.
It really comes down to, like, from the get-go, I make sure to emphasize communication, like not being able to see the athletes on a normal basis. Like, I may see, if I'm lucky, I may see most of these guys once a month. It may be months without seeing them in person for a session. So realistically, just telling them like, you're not coming to sessions, like I'm not going to be able to have like day-to-day conversations with you, so just text me, like shoot me video, shoot me any questions, and it does, like, it's not that hard to respond to a text. So just text them back, communicate. Can be super simple adjustments. I would say like the biggest thing that helps that, and the adjustments we make, like I touched on before, is the assessment process. So that was a big thing that I built out. Originally we would do all assessments in-house and then push the athletes to the remote program, have them do everything remotely. But over the course of building out the remote program, built out a remote assessment that follows our in-house one almost to a T. Just have to dictate like camera angles because it's all recorded, sent to me, or uploaded to track, and we assess from there, which really gives us a baseline of how they move, how their body works, and then we're able to individualize everything off of that. But that really serves as a baseline. So
for sure,
starting to get more into the wellness side now with Nick's help a lot, for sure. We have some guys doing RTT stuff in the remote program. So realistically, for guys like that, they're going to lean on me more. Where someone that's more healthy, just like cruising in the remote program, no issues, probably going to hear from them less. Maybe I literally just meet with them,
just check up,
a couple times a month, and we just kind of go from there.
So you talked about it just a little bit. So, and I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, but so going into being injured, right, and understanding that I do want to return to throwing, like you said, a lot of parents would go, well, I don't want to sign him up for something that he's not always being checked up on. How have you seen the kids, and you mentioned that you have more than a couple in the RTT program that are getting better and that are progressing fastly to be able to throw at a high level. How have you seen the trust factor, because that's really what it is, how have you seen that kind of grow?
I would say a big part of that, not to double down on the assessment process, but realistically a lot of the objectiveness that we can give them through our assessment, not only the physical one, but getting them on the force plate, seeing how their central nervous system works, getting them on an arm care test, see how strong their arm is, see what kind of range of motion we're working with, and then being able to paint a picture like, this is why we think you got hurt in the first place, this is what we're going to do to attack those weaknesses, and then give them like a general idea of what the throwing is going to look like. Realistically from there, just like everything else in the remote program, it comes down to what they have access to. So right now we have a guy thrown on pulse that gives me way more objective data than like anyone else can give me. Then I have a couple guys just using radar guns to monitor RPE. And then I have some guys that don't have radar guns that were just using strictly subjective RPE. And then obviously throwing volume, intensity, trying to work up that way. So realistically, giving that objective data, telling them what they aren't necessarily the best at and what they need to work on to return or to help prevent further injuries, and then from a return to throw standpoint, and really just pushing them to that success from there.
For sure. So before we go to another perk that I think the remote or at least our remote program has, I want you to talk about the impact that Nick has had.
Okay.
So being able to bridge a gap that a lot of facilities don't really try to go after is the wellness part, right? They don't want to fully encompass it and make it a full training facility, like a one-stop shop for everything. Talk about how he has obviously enhanced this place as a whole. You don't have to go into that too much, but talk about how he's helped you with the remote program side.
Really just giving me someone to lean on. So from a professional standpoint, he's by far just amazing to have in the facility in general. From the remote side, just being able to bounce things off of him, use like so everything becomes a little bit more contextual when the remote guys come in, because we don't get to see them on a day-to-day basis. Things like their jump profiles, their arm care scores become much more
would you say
contextual?
Skewed? Oh, okay.
Or they can become skewed, so then it becomes contextual, like
for sure,
determining what they've done over the course of the week, the last couple of days, that could potentially skew that. So talking to Nick about things like that, him having more experience helping guys through the return to throw process and just rehabilitation in general, as well as just his knowledge of the human body itself has been huge. So I'd say from his standpoint, like just being able to get programs for guys, like specific things, like let's say pitcher comes in with a shoulder problem, we get him on an arm care test, we see that his external rotators are just super weak, nickel build out, or we potentially could already have ER like focus built out that I would just put into the remote, whatever remote athlete's RTT plan, and then we can just kind of go from there, and just being able to constantly talk to him, update him on athletes, and just get some input from a like physical well-being standpoint has been just tremendous.
Amazing. Like I said before, it kind of like fully encompasses a program, because before you weren't able to get that wellness side, but now you can objectively, like you said, be able to give them, okay, this is what we can do, and now we can prevent it with this. Yeah,
I think from personal experience too, when I was doing a lot of the remote stuff, I was coming back from a labrum surgery. So from a RTT and like wellness standpoint, I felt like that was one part in most remote programs that was pretty lacking. Like having someone to go to that could give you things that were beyond like a just healthy, normal athlete's capabilities. And getting a modified version of whatever RTT stuff needs to happen.
And so, and I'll ask you this question, and I don't want you to go into like name any names, but what was it the lack of detail, or just honestly the lack of knowledge? And that's not their fault, right? Because if they have the lack of knowledge, then they can't give it out anyways. But or was it more of a lack of detail?
Honestly, it might not even be either. I felt like the knowledge was there. It was just the systems weren't in place through those remote programs to get that to me. Obviously, even now going through it, like it's super difficult. Trying to help a RTT athlete through a throwing program or any sort of strength rehabilitation program remotely, just because you don't get to see them. So like seeing that firsthand now, it's understandable to an extent, like why that gap was there. It's super difficult to navigate. So I think it was just more of a logistical thing. They didn't have systems in place to really get that done.
Okay, so I'll go back to the perk I was talking about. Another thing you guys really like to try to do is get the remote clients in-house.
Yes.
So you will always want to make sure that you have a basis of the technology that is used in here, and you use these athletes whether they're remote or not. So we've had some travel all the way from LA, right, to come down here. Talk about how that has been impactful to the program.
I think just in general, like being able to have a wider reach and being able to help people. Like realistically, we have a larger SoCal following now because of the remote program, but being able to reach up north, up into NorCal, and then out in St. Louis, shout out Gannon, or I guess we have Carter too, in Arizona. So we have a couple out-of-state guys. So it's for sure slowly going, getting us more of a national reach. But I think just being able to help people anywhere, regardless of circumstances, is the biggest thing.
So now I want you to, from the athlete's perspective, how have you seen them, and obviously not only progress like we talked about before, but kind of be able to trust you and like be able to come in with questions and understand that this guy is not just going to feed me something to where it's going to make me feel better for a little bit. Like this is these things that I'm doing are genuinely making me better, and I'm genuinely feeling better because of the wellness side that is now full encompassing of it.
For sure. I think part of that comes into just like the relationship piece of the remote program, like developing good relationships with the athletes. And two, like I've been really blessed with the group of athletes I've had, a bunch of really good athletes that are really bought in. I think that's one thing about the remote program. Like it takes a specific athlete to really buy in and to get the most out of the remote program. Because you don't have people watching you, there's a lot of like self accountability that goes into it. But I think on the flip side, being able to take those objective numbers and reassess them when they come in, get them on TrackMan again, get them on arm care test again, get them on the force plates again, and be able to touch on what we've programmed has influenced the numbers changing, and then just really progressing from there. I think the overall the well-being side, that's more so like how they feel. So through Nick and I's guidance, if they feel better, that's just automatic buy-in
For sure.
from the start. Any sort of injury is going to cause some mental warfare.
Of course.
So when you get over that hump, it's really gratifying.
Yeah.
So I think like anything on the wellness side is just super easy to get by, and once you get that little sense of relief.
For sure. It's like the whole thing. You just feel better. You play better. You're not gonna feel bad and then be like, oh, I feel great. Like, it's just not how that's gonna work. So now I'll keep it from the same end of like the parent, the new child. The trust factor is huge, and being able to make sure that the coach is always on the same page. Talk about how when we get a kid from the remote program in here, how important it is that everybody's kind of on the same page with that. And a lot of parents could go, well, I don't really want him to come in because what if another coach tells him to do this, right? So talk about how the remote program, not basically coming off of what's in here, but how you've formatted it to make kids feel comfortable when they do come into the facility.
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to the programming is very, very similar. There's very few tweaks other than like whatever they're handcuffed by in terms of equipment access and availability. So really the systems take care of itself because they have the same warm-ups as kids in here, because they have this very similar throwing, if not the same throwing, hitting, whatever it may be. They can really just slide into sessions. And that was something that really helped this summer, like not really having the ability to like hold a remote athlete's hand through a session, like being able to have them just go into the system, hit their warm-up, hit their arm care, go through everything, and then see them for their bullpen or whatever it may be for that day. And at the same time, have those systems get the objective data I need. Like having the warm-up coaches still facilitate them jumping on the force plates, doing an arm care test. So at the end of the day, not only do I get to work with them, which may be the only time I get to work with them for months or that month in general, and then be able to take that objective data, tie it into what I may be seeing or it may be going on, and then just really gives us the data and information to progress the program or regress the program, just basically manipulate the program however we may see fit, and really go from there.
Well, it goes back to that individualized training piece. Like, you always want to make sure that the athlete isn't doing just a cookie cutter program that, okay, it may not work for you, but you're going to do it anyways just because we say it and you want it. You guys really do, and you especially go into a deep dive. You ask the kid questions. How does this feel? How does that feel? Does this hurt when you do this? Like, you give them extensive critiques about everything that they do. You make sure their assessment process is right when they do the stretches. Even if they do them wrong, you're like, okay, well, it looks like this, but hey, do it right next time so that we can actually get a right read on it. So with all of this and all the conversation we had about it, I want you to start talking about next steps. Like, what would you like, as the head of it, what would you like to be seen as or progress to going forward
in terms of like the remote program in general?
Just in general.
Obviously I'd like to continue the growth of the remote program. I mean, I could see it getting to 100 plus, like I don't know how long that would take, but having a more national reach, like more out of state guys, just having a more global reach in general would be really cool. I think having the ability to mandate some technology, like having more guys on pulse, getting more guys arm care sensors, blast motion sensors, things like of that nature, to use more objective data in the remote program. Just finding more ways to find many hacks to get guys the most out of what they got. I think it's more the reach, getting more people into the remote program as athletes, but also coaches, like getting coaches up to the speed. Currently working on some like internal stuff, trying to get some like educational stuff built out for the remote program to start getting some coaches up to speed. Because realistically, once we get more coaches up to speed, easier to bring on more clients, and just grow the program as a whole, and really just go from there.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you guys very much for listening. This has been Talking Points with KPI, episode number 44. This is Cameron Crone, the pitching coordinator here at KPI. If you guys would want to learn more about the remote program or remote training, please visit kpimh.com, find the remote training tab, read all about it, sign up for it. If you are out of state or out of the Morgan Hill, San Jose area, feel free to sign up and get more information on it. We will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Bang. Nice job.